We come into incarnation, we have a physical body. We have to come in through a physical vehicle that consists of our physical body, our lower mind, and our lower emotions. In other words, those are all the things we take personally. Personality is that aspect of us that takes things personally. So on the right here, symbolically shown is the personality vehicle, which is threefold: physical body, lower emotions, lower mind. To the left, we have the female figure, which symbolically represents the soul. That is the part of us that is here to grow, learn, and evolve. And it does that through the experiences that it will have via the personality on the physical plane. Above that, symbolically represented by the angel, is our spirit or higher self, is another name that can be used. Our spirit or higher self, which is our spirit or higher self. And our spirit or higher self has the bigger picture. Our soul is sort of focused on what it wants to do in this lifetime, in this current lifetime, but of course it has a history. It has experiences that are influencing it in this life, but nevertheless it's here to grow and evolve. Our spirit has a bigger picture. It's got a bigger take on things, and the spirit is that part of us that sends impulses down to spirit to heal or grow, or for those promptings. It's time to leave that terrible job or that limiting relationship, whatever it might be. And it's up to the soul to receive that guidance and instruction and then give that information to the personality to then act on it. Inevitably, that doesn't happen. That relationship isn't in place, but that's the natural workings of that. Above that, the monadic self is shown by those rays that are there, the sun. So we come from the source, from the oneness. And each one of us is a spark of light, a ray of light, a sunbeam. Remember that song, I'm a little sunbeam or something? So each one of us is a spark. That's our monadic self. As humans, we operate in a three-dimensional reality. We operate in chronos time. That means everything's measured, everything's visible. We can see it, we can hear it, we can smell it. So that's three-dimensional reality. The soul is not visible to the physical senses. The soul is not visible to at a three-dimensional level because it exists beyond the body, beyond our emotions or feelings, or beyond our mind, our thinking mind. But the soul, for all that it is not visible, is so powerful. We cannot underestimate the power of soul. You know, I hear, oh, the subconscious is powerful and the unconscious is powerful. Yeah, sure, but actually, excuse me, the soul is the inner director of our lives. It is consciousness devoid of form. Okay, so it doesn't have a physical form, can't be measured, it can't be put under a microscope. It's consciousness devoid of form, and it's the inner living self-awareness which enables us to know we exist. It's that which gives us the capacity to observe that which is above and beyond just our physical experience. The soul's that part of us that's on a journey of growth and evolution. And just talking about that growth and evolution, the soul is not here to stay the same. It's here to evolve in each lifetime. And it's here to grow and evolve, not just in each major cycle of a lifetime. It's here to evolve in every experience that it has is an opportunity for the soul to grow and evolve. Unfortunately, that isn't often what happens because, as we'll discover, the soul gets stuck in experiences and stops growing in that area of its life, and so continues on cycles of similarity as opposed to spiraling to growth and evolution. So its objective is to grow and evolve. The soul has lived many lifetimes and has had many, many different experiences. Some of those experiences are the soul are empowering, and some the soul has experienced as disempowering. Equally, some of the experiences have enhanced the soul and others have diminished it. So the nature of the experiences and the soul's relationship with those experiences shapes our character, which is an expression of our soul state. So, for instance, let's say the soul has had experiences where it has been marginalized and in lifetime after lifetime and seen as insignificant or unimportant or inferior in some way. We're likely to come in, and our character is such that we are feeling that, oh, well, we're not as good as, we're less than. And so we're going to meet life through that lens. We can do all the positive affirmations we like, I'm a wonderful person, I'm important. But we're lucky if we even scratch the surface, because those affirmations are just directed at the external aspect of us, as opposed to coming to the originating cause, which is held at soul level. The soul has had an experience, has had experiences. It is now locked into that reality, that soul story. And that soul story of I'm less than or I'm inferior is going to continue unless that story is changed. And the only way we can change it is at the level of the soul, because that's where it's held. It's not just held in our mind at a personality level. It's not just held in our emotional state. It's a story that is written in our Akashic records. So the ancient Egyptians used the word ba to indicate the soul, so B-A, the word they used to indicate the soul, and they symbolically represented the soul as being a bird with a human head hovering over the mummy of the recently deceased. In other words, that the person, the physical body was there, but the soul was free to leave that physical body, just as it was free at some future time to descend again and come into incarnation. That representation of the soul as being a bird has another level of interpretation as well, because it signifies that in Kairos time, that we don't have to die physically for the soul to be free. And another way of saying this is the soul is not bound by physical constraints. So in the rich and multifaceted world of shamanism, when we're talking about soul, we understand that two things, power loss and soul loss, are central to understanding the spiritual ailments that can affect individuals. They're two separate things, power loss and soul loss. So that they are two important concepts, realities, metaphysical realities that are central to understanding the problems, the spiritual ailments that can beset individuals. And that they have different healing practices designed to address them. So we're going to be doing different things when we're addressing power loss than we are when we're addressing soul loss. So both conditions, power loss and soul loss, while related to the spiritual well-being of a person, they differ significantly in their origins and their symptoms and the healing methodology that we're going to be using. Both power loss and soul loss are conditions that speak to the fragmentation and depletion of an individual's spiritual essence. So power loss and soul loss, while they're different, will both speak to the depletion of our spiritual essence, our spiritual power, our potency. However, while they have that commonality, that they'll affect the integrity of our spiritual essence, they both differ fundamentally in their origins, manifestations, and healing processes. So in level 1, shamanic soul healing, we looked at power loss and how power loss relates to the depletion of spiritual vitality and how it necessitates the restoration of spiritual power and connections. And in level 2, we'll delve deeper into the concept of soul loss. Soul loss deals with the fragmentation of the soul due to many, many factors. Trauma is one of them, and it requires the intricate process of soul retrieval. So in the journey toward healing and wholeness, recognizing the distinction between these two conditions is paramount, because it allows for a more targeted approach to healing, ensuring that the shamanic processes applied are in direct response to the unique needs of the individual soul and spirit. In other words, we're using the right tool in the toolbox. We're reaching for, a scalpel if we need a scalpel, or we're reaching for, the tweezers if we need tweezers, if we're using that as an example. So through the wise and compassionate application of these shamanic healing practices, we can assist individuals to navigate their way back to a state of spiritual integrity and vitality. And that means that they can embrace a life that is marked by depth and purpose and a profound connection to the unseen realms that shape our existence. So just very briefly to recap, to make sure we are really understanding the difference between power loss, soul loss. Power loss refers to a depletion of a person's spiritual energy or power. From a shamanic perspective, of course, every individual possesses a spiritual force that sustains their health, their vitality, and connection to the universe. Power loss can manifest as chronic illness, bad luck, fatigue, general lack of motivation, enthusiasm for life. It's as if a person's spiritual batteries have been drained, leaving them vulnerable to further spiritual and physical ailments. So the causes of power loss are varied, but often include disconnection from nature, the spiritual disalignment, or the loss of the individual's power animal, guardian spirit, their soul guardian, or their spiritual ally teacher, which in shamanic practice are considered sources of strength, protection, and guidance. So healing from power loss involves the shamanic practice of power animal retrieval or restoration of the soul guardian and the spiritual teacher. So that process restores their spiritual vitality and reestablishes their connection to their inherent strength in the natural world. And that restoration of power is often marked by an increase in energy, a resurgence of motivation and purpose, and an enhanced sense of personal sovereignty and resilience. Sort of like the blood's flowing again, you might say. And plugged back in. The power's back on. So we're clear on power loss and what we need to do for that. Now, soul loss and soul fragmentation. Soul loss is a spiritual condition that occurs when a part of the soul disassociates from the individual, usually as a result of traumatic experiences. Remember, traumatic experience is relative to that soul. We can't judge we can't say to somebody, oh, well, gee, your trauma isn't that big. I had a bigger trauma. We can't judge trauma because trauma is relative to that soul. So there's a vast range, trauma could be there to here, anywhere in between. So we cannot put a label on trauma and what's trauma and what should be trauma and what shouldn't be trauma. It's relative to that soul. So this soul loss, soul fragmentation, when a part splits off or disassociates, can lead to a host of emotional and psychological challenges, including feelings of incompleteness, chronic depression, emotional numbness, sense of something being missing in the life. In shamanic traditions, these experiences of what the individual is feeling are not seen as merely psychological, like they sort of are in today's world. They're not seen as being psychological. They're understood as the loss of a vital part of one's spiritual wholeness, not just in the head or emotionally related. It's understood to be a loss of a vital part of one's spiritual wholeness. So if you can imagine it, say, like a clock, we've got the workings of a clock, an old clock, old style clock with cogs. And if there was lost that little cog and lost that little cog, well, how can the clock work properly? So we need all the cogs back. We need all the bits back, 84 bits back. So shaman and shamanic practitioners view soul loss as a survival mechanism where the soul part, the soul fragment, has retreated to the spiritual realms to escape the full impact of the trauma. And that resultant whole that's left, some parts left, that resulting whole in the soul's integrity or wholeness can lead to diminished vitality and a weakened spiritual force. The healing process for soul loss, which we refer to as soul retrieval, involves journeying into non-ordinary reality, which is four-dimensional reality, to retrieve and locate that lost soul part. So we cannot do it. We cannot do soul retrieval in three-dimensional reality, in Chronos time. We can't do it there. We can't do it in clock time, because that's not the soul's natural place. Personality can function in clock time, measuring time, but the soul can't. Won't be going anywhere. So it can only take place in Kairos time, can only take place in that space where soul is free, soul is liberated from the constraints of what the logical mind says is possible. So this process of journeying to non-ordinary reality to locate and retrieve the soul part is deeply transformative and is often accompanied by significant life changes, often emotional shifts and changes, and then a period of integration, because that retrieved soul part has to be assimilated back into the spiritual essence, leading to that restoration of wholeness and well-being. So over the course of a life or many lifetimes, as a result of the experiences we've had, we lose touch with soul. And over the course of our experiences in incarnation, We lose touch with aspects of ourselves. We lose or give away these vital aspects of ourselves, pieces of ourselves that were originally part of our soul as we encounter life events and life circumstances and other souls. And we can progressively lose or squander our divine inheritance. And in doing so, we lose our joy, or we lose our motivation, or we lose our confidence, or we lose our enthusiasm for life. And we create negative soul stories and realities that are not a reflection of that original creation pattern held at our monadic self. They're not a reflection of the spiritual gifts we were given. So we create negative soul stories. We create lies. The opposite of Mart is the natural order, that which is our pattern. The opposite of that is called Isfet. So we create negative soul stories or tell ourselves lies that are not a reflection of the original creation pattern. They're negative soul stories, and they're a lie. They're not who we are at that monadic level, which is our divine self. Every time we lose a piece, we create limiting physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual realities. And our lives become smaller and smaller and smaller and more inflexible and more self-limiting. The objective of the soul is to evolve and grow, to be more. But when we lose pieces of ourselves, then the life becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And so instead of that abundance that is our natural birthright, we become more and more impoverished, spiritually impoverished. We are no longer one with our divine self, our monadic self. We've become progressively disengaged, disconnected, disassociated, disenfranchised, or dispossessed at a soul level, and out of alignment with our real self, our true story and destiny. Five of Pentacles here, illustrating many things. And so we are wounded, we're impoverished, we're paupers, and at some point we will need to go in for healing. And where we go in, so we go into the temple, we go into the sacred space, we go into the healing space where our pattern, you'll see the patterns in the glass there, where the pattern can be put back in order. So soul loss occurs through a particular process. It's really important to understand that. Soul loss isn't just some random thing. Oh, yes, I'll do a soul retrieval. Well, we've got to understand, how does it occur in the first place? Because as the healer, priest, priestess who's working with the sacred art of soul retrieval, you've got to know how it works for it to become an art, because then you can artfully help a person to put themselves back together again. So soul loss occurs through a particular process, and because it occurs through a particular process, the piece of the soul that we are reclaiming, retrieving, reintegrating can only be reinstated through a particular process. We lost it a particular way. We can only get it back through a particular way. So the process of soul restoration is a sacred art and science. An art and a science. We have to know what we're doing. So the soul is that part of us that holds the knowledge of all of our experiences in this life and previous lives. When we lose touch or move out of relationship with a vital aspect of ourselves, we're not the same, because we've lost We've lost some light, you might say. We've lost life. We've lost love, some part of us that was part of us, like losing a loved one. And we've lost natural law. We've lost the 4 L's. One of the most common forms of soul loss or fragmentation occurs through our relationships with others. Over the course of the soul's journey and throughout its many lifetimes, and as a result of its experiences in relationship with others, the soul can lose or give away vital aspects of itself. As I said, we can give away or lose our sense of joy, power, will, our mind, our heart, to name a few of the more obvious. And we can do this without even realizing we're doing it. And sometimes we can do it even though we know we're doing it. You see people in relationships and they know they're giving away their power. They keep on doing it. So sometimes, my point being, sometimes it's conscious. We know we're doing it. Sometimes it's unconscious. But whether it's conscious or whether it's not conscious, either way, the end result is the same. Big trouble for the soul. The soul is diminished, less than, because of it. Giving away pieces of ourself or losing pieces of ourself really brings a very real set of problems. And those aspects of ourself that we've lost or that have left can easily become stuck or trapped in a space-time location, which is a fabric of space-time continuum. And they are unable to return without assistance or intervention. They have left our force field, you might say. They've left our space. And they cannot return without specialist assistance or intervention. The more aspects of ourself, of our soul that we lose or give away, the further and further and further away we move from our divine nature and the divine aspect of ourselves. So when we're at one, it is literally like this. We are at one with our divine nature and the divine aspect of ourselves. However, for most people, that is not the case. There is a gaping chasm that exists between where they are and who they are. Where they are now and who they actually really are. So in addition to this, according to universal law, energy abhors a vacuum. And so therefore the resulting gap created from that missing piece of ourself is always replaced with something else that is inevitably of an inferior vibrational resonance or nature. In other words, joy replaced with depression, or power replaced with a sense of disempowerment. So the soul is unable to move beyond a story that it's created, that it can't get resolution around. It gets stuck or trapped in that story, which is where we are coming to assist that soul to be liberated or free from that story that it's unable to gain resolution around itself. Because the soul becomes attached or stuck in stories that it can't get resolution around. It can't evolve. It's unable to evolve beyond that story until resolution has occurred. Old limiting stories are devolutionary in nature because they keep the soul returning to the old patterns and stories from the past that are limiting. Because in most cases, the old stories are disempowering, they're destructive, they're negative, they're self-sabotaging. And so we have literally woven, like a spider, the soul has woven a story. And it's trapped in the reality that it's woven for itself. And that reality is one where pieces of the soul are trapped in a space-time location and unable to return without direct intervention at a soul level, which is the work of the soul intercessor, i.e. you. So when aspects of the soul or pieces of the soul are trapped in alternate realities, we can liken that reality to an individual or someone that we love who is trapped or stranded in a foreign country. Can you imagine someone you love who's trapped or stranded in a foreign country? They can't come home. They're thousands of miles away, light years away in a different time-space location, and they can't come home. They're waiting for somebody to, or for the plane to come and get them, pick them up and take them back home. It's like that. So that the aspect of the soul that's lost is like in a holding pattern. They're lost, they're neglected, they're locked out, they're stuck, they're starving, in some way waiting for someone to care enough to find them and come and pick them up or arrange for them to return home. The reality is that most people have some degree of soul loss or fragmentation, and that has real repercussions that impacts the person's life in subtle or in more obvious ways. The ancients understood soul loss as a spiritual illness that can cause emotional, mental, and physical disease. And if we don't directly address the problem parts of the soul, that has split off or fragmented, that they may remain out of reach for years or even lifetimes. So consequently, it is absolutely vital, it's critical, that these fragmented aspects of the self are reintegrated, are reclaimed, retrieved, reunited, reintegrated, so that the real self can be restored. A failure to do that results in increased levels of pain, anxiety, stress, depression. It also creates a distortion in the way a person perceives reality. Okay, so soul loss is dis-ease-inducing because there is a lack of harmony within the being. It is dis-ease-inducing and causes a lack of holistic well-being through being trapped in negative patterns or cycles of similarity that increasingly work to damage the integrity of the soul. So it all works to slow down or halt evolutionary progress and spiritual development, which unnecessarily prolongs suffering. When there's soul loss or fragmentation, we're usually searching for something outside of ourselves, one way or another. We might be feeling trapped, blocked, stuck, or just sense that something's missing and try to fill that void, fill that gap with people or possessions, whatever it might be. Working with soul loss, working at a soul loss level really is a highly skilled area. And this is our area of expertise. There's a basic checklist of symptoms that can indicate soul loss. You can have a difficult time staying in our body, and this is not a finite list, but having a difficult time staying in the body, feeling as if you're outside observing your body, as if you're in a movie, feeling weakened, dispirited, numb, deadened, apathetic, chronic depression, feeling that you've finding yourself looking for external things to fill the void, inner emptiness, difficulty moving on, cycles of similarity, negative cycles of similarity, never having got over the death of a loved one, many stories that we will hear when we listen to our clients. And that's the thing, when you're really listening to your clients, they will tell you. They may say things like, well, I've never felt the same since my partner died. I've never felt the same since You know, my mother told me I was an ugly child. I could sit here and talk for an hour on things that I've heard clients say. I don't feel whole. I don't feel fully at home within myself. You know, I feel dead inside. Everything seems pointless. I could just tell you hundreds, thousands, but you'll learn to recognize those conversations that another soul is having to let you know that they consciously or unconsciously register that part of them is missing. You know, I feel alone, I feel abandoned. You know, they're telling us their story. I'm just going to read through some of these examples here. I'm exhausted. I don't belong. I feel disconnected and lonely. Something is missing. I don't know what. In this life, I've been punished to do things for everyone else, but not myself. I feel worthless, unheard, unseen. It's difficult to make money as a woman. It's a struggle. Looking for a partner to fulfill the void in the life. I don't know who I am anymore. Life feels a constant struggle. I keep attracting people that reject me. I can't move on from a verbally abusive relationship, even though the partner is now deceased. A pattern of failed relationship. I'm not good enough. Behind all of these statements is a story that has come from somewhere, has been come into being, has been created, has been brought into being, has been given life at the expense of something else. Every soul is different. Every soul's story is different. How that negative limiting story came into being will be unique for that soul. So while there are similarities in some of these statements, every soul is unique. And the process of reweaving, helping them to release that old story and to reweave a new one is also unique.